Hey friends, welcome to 1 Minute with Monée, a podcast where we help busy adults live life with balance and harmony 1 minute at a time. I'm your host Monée, owner of Time Managed LLC, a full-service concierge and personal assistant business in Atlanta, Georgia. Visit our website, timemanagedllc.com, for more information about our services. Every week, I'll share tips for how you can manage your lifestyle and tackle your to-do list efficiently. Hello, and welcome to the next edition of 1 Minute with Monée. Today, we have a returning guest, Dana Allen, attorney in the Atlanta area. We are welcoming her back today, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the probate process. Hi, Dana. How are you?
Hey, good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I am doing well. Thank you.
Good. Well, it's great to have you back again. Just for those who may not have listened to the last episode, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am an attorney in the Atlanta area. I practice real estate, probate, and estate planning.
Okay, awesome. And when you think about the probate process, what does that all entail?
Well, probate is necessary when somebody passes away with or without a will and there's property that they may need to try to resolve, or for lack of a better word, I would say an overall estate that needs to be handled. If you have a will, you do have to submit that will to the probate court in your county to have it what we call probated. So that means that it's submitted to the court. A judge will look over it and decide how or what they're going to do from there. And then if someone passes away without a will, they also have to submit the estate to probate. And again, a judge makes a decision of what to do from there.
Okay, great. And so is there any preparation that needs to happen prior to a loved one passing away, or is this something that is automatic after they die?
Yes. So, a lot of people do wills. So if a will is drawn up and it's properly executed, then at that point, what's important is that loved ones know that they do have to do something else other than just have the will when their loved one passes away. They actually have to submit that will to the probate court to enforce whatever is in that will if that's what they so desire. Another option is to do a trust. A trust is a document that allows a family to handle the affairs of the estate within the trust. So essentially everything's kind of ran through the trust instead of having to be submitted to the court to be probated.
Now, can you walk me through a process? Let's start with if I don't have a will, what are the steps that take place after I pass? What will my family have to do after I pass if I don't have a will?
Yes, so there's different options that are available if your family should pass away. I'm sorry, if you were to pass away and your family did not have a will that you left behind, then there's different documents that can be filed with the court in order to probate that estate. So you may have a year's support. And again, this list I'm going through is not going to be everything, but these are the most common ones I see in my practice. So you may have a year's support document. You may have letters of no administration necessary. And you also may have somebody that files letters for administration.
Now, there was a statistic that I came across that says only 64% of adults have a will. Is that alarming to you?
It is not. I think that when it comes to writing wills, it's not something that a lot of us like to think about as our imminent death. And another thing that I have found is a lot of people feel like I have time. So I think even somebody with the best intentions may pass away without a will because they just think they'll have time to draft one.
So let's talk about the process if I do have a will. So it sounds like it may make the probate process a little easier. So can you walk me through that process?
Yes. So the first thing I would suggest is definitely go to a licensed attorney in your state in order to have a will drafted. A lot of people run into problems by just pulling wills off of the internet because they're not one size fit all for every state. And so you want to make sure that you've gone to a licensed attorney. That attorney is advising you so that you're not putting contradictory things in your will, as well as you kind of want to make sure that, what you're intending to have happen is what's actually in that document. So again, first and foremost, I'm going to highly advise to get a licensed attorney to assist you with writing those wills.
Okay. And so are there any challenges, even if you do have a will during the probate process, that people should be aware of What are those things that people should make sure that they do and look out for?
Well, it's important that people understand that they actually are going to have to do something else, or your heirs are going to have to do something once you pass away. A lot of people may believe that just because there's a will and somebody's been granted something, that it automatically goes in their name. In my real estate practice, I see that a lot, that people will say, oh, well, the house was given to me in the will. And I say, okay, well, have you actually probated the will? Have you submitted it to your county so that you can get the rights to do whatever it is that you want to do with that property? And very commonly I hear, no, but he said it's mine. And I said, I do understand that, but there's a process that has to happen in order for you to be able to transfer the property. So a lot of people mistakenly believe it's just an automatic thing when you're named in the will to receive certain property. You still have to go to the probate court to have the authority to transact business on behalf of that person who has passed away.
Got it.
And also, I see a lot where people assume that because maybe they're holding title together, that so a husband and wife own a house together, they're both on that document. And depending on the type of deed that they have, if the deed doesn't say joint tenants or rights of survivorship or something to that effect, then essentially what happens is the husband owns 50%, the wife owns 50%, but they independently own their 50%. It doesn't automatically go to the other person when they pass away. And so sometimes it can get a little bit confusing for people. And that's where those years supports sometimes come in, is that, you still are going to have to go to probate court to get that other 50% into your name or some other process in order to get the property into your name.
Now, I was also reading that 15% of wills are contested. So the scenario that you just described, does that kind of account for some of the reasons why some wills are contested?
Yeah, so I understand that a lot of people mistakenly believe just because they hold a certain status, that was my mom, that was my dad, that was my husband, that was my wife, that they may have some kind of superior claim over things, especially when you have, blended families. Dynamics affect a lot of who may stake a claim into what. Sometimes people draft wills before they have children. And once they have children, things kind of change, or somebody may draft a will and get a divorce, but they never go back and address their will. There's a lot of different factors that happen that people will try to contest. You may have a child that says, daddy wouldn't have really done that. Maybe they were coerced into doing it or something to that effect. So that's why, again, I think it's important to go to an attorney, who's an independent, neutral third party, and that can kind of make sure that those undue influences are not present when wills are drafted, so that, you don't have so much contested.
That sounds important. And when someone is drafting a will and making sure that all of their assets are there, how do you, how do you ensure that? It seems like, of course, life happens. You may buy another property, you may sell one, you may have an increase in your wealth, and so your investment accounts are higher, or you may change accounts. So one, I guess, is that it sounds like it is important because you want to make sure your assets are accurately reflected throughout this process. But two, what do you recommend as a refresh process to ensure that all your assets are accounted for?
So I think it's important to kind of have a yearly checkup with whomever your legal professional is. So as you're having documents drafted, hopefully you're working with someone that you like and that you trust. So kind of yearly, there should be a check-in with your attorney to say, hey, has anything changed? Have you had any major life events? And at that point, if any documents need to be revised, then you can do that at that time.
Okay, great. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about executors. It sounds like executors may reduce the probate time by 30%. What is the role of an executor, and how do they play a part in making sure that the process after someone passes away is executed properly?
Okay. So what I see a lot in my real estate practice is that I will have people that come in and say, hey, I'm the executor over my mom's estate. Okay, great. Can you show me your, probate documents where you've been properly approved? And they're like, hold on, what? What do you mean? I haven't done all that. So it's important to understand two things. One, an executor is if there's a will.
Okay.
So whenever somebody uses that term, that means that there is a will. Somewhere out there, there's a will. And then once you have that will and, you've been appointed or you're going to, or the court appoints somebody, then that person is quote unquote the executor. And that's the person that's kind of managing the probate of the will, execution of the directives in that will. So that person's going to make sure that they follow that decedent's last wishes. So that's what an executor is. And then you have a lot of people that use executor and administrator interchangeably. An administrator is when there's not a will. So that means that you've gone to the court, say, hey, this person's probated, but there's not a will. And so that's where you have an administrator. An administrator is essentially going to do kind of the same things that the executor is going to do. So executor means will, administrator means no will.
So when you were here last time, you mentioned that either you pay now or you pay later. Can you talk a little bit about the cost of probate and what that really means about preparation and how the cost may change versus whether you take precautions prior to you passing away versus after with no will?
So when it comes to costs, it can vary greatly, and just depending upon the attorney that you hire, because we all charge a different fee. But I always like to try to liken it to, do you want to go ahead and pay now so that your wishes are already in motion before you pass away by doing a trust? Or you can have your heirs do it on the back end by doing a will. And so they most likely will have to hire an attorney to probate the estate, and the attorney may charge, about the same as what it would have cost you to do a trust. So if you ask me a trust versus a will, I'm 9 out of 10 times going to go with the trust, just because you can kind of get things in motion before you pass away, so that once you pass away, things aren't greatly changing because it's already moving along. The train has already left the station. And when it comes to the will, of course, I think you spoke earlier about a statistic that you found. It's possible that people may contest what's in that will. A will is subject to probate, and that is going before a judge who can make different decisions than maybe what you actually intended, because your will may be up for interpretation.
Now, do some of those fees vary by state?
I can only speak for Georgia and Alabama. I'm not licensed in other states, so I don't know what attorneys may charge in other states. But of course, yes, you can definitely shop around for attorneys and attorneys' fees like you would anything else. Costs may vary based on experience and other factors that you'll have to kind of work with to try to fit your budget.
I have one clarifying question. Well, you mentioned trust, and that was probably the key of what I was missing in that question about paying now or paying later. But do estates with trust avoid probate entirely?
Yes, that is the point of a properly set up trust, is to avoid probate. So
Okay.
you should not have to go to probate court if your trust has been properly set up. So again, this is where I'm going to highly advise that you hire an experienced attorney to set up your trust. You may find something on the internet, or you may have another person that says, hey, I can do your trust. You don't need an attorney. I would highly suggest that you hire an attorney that will properly set up your trust, fund your trust. Trusts are not just for the rich. Trusts are for anybody that has property that they need to try to transfer, and that they want to kind of make sure it's in place, it's rolling along before they pass away. When it comes to a trust, it can basically do everything that a will should be able to do, with the exception, of course, if you have minor children, then you will need that will in order to address your children.
Okay. Okay. That's really helpful. Thank you for that clarification. Are there any recent legal changes that we should be aware of that may not be common knowledge right now?
One of the things that I would tell people when it comes to property in particular and the intersection with probate is that there's a transfer on death deed in Georgia. It's a new deed that recently was passed within the year, and it allows for the property to stay in the name of the person it's currently in. Once they pass away, then the house can be transferred to someone else by that person going and doing an additional step in order to get the house and claim the house, say, yes, I want it mine. That will avoid that person having to go through probate in order to get that property. So that's one of my favorite intersections of real estate and probate right now, because most people, a house is their biggest asset. That's the one thing that they're really needing to protect and make sure that they can kind of properly transfer it upon their death. So this transfer on death deed is kind of a game changer for Georgia. And the reason why we like those transfer on death deeds may be because before, a lot of people would just use quick claim deeds. So they're like, oh, when I pass away, I just want my daughter to be able to get this property put in her name and she not have to go through probate. And that's fine, except for, if one of you all may get a lien put against them or, have outstanding tax debt. Well, if you put that property in your daughter's name before you pass away and she has that tax lien, then that tax lien now gets put against your house. And this transfer on death deed will avoid that. She won't be on title until the daughter wouldn't be on title until the mom, dad passed away. And then at that point, she can take that step to put it into her name. And also, if you were to do a quick claim deed before you were to pass away, if you decided you wanted to sell the property, well, now you need daughter's permission in order to sell because she's now a co-owner of that property.
Okay, interesting. Good ideas, good advice. But what about assets outside of real estate? Maybe you have international assets or just general assets that are not deemed to be real estate. What is the process, or how are those treated differently during the probate process?
Yeah. So, when it comes to owning property, and I won't even say international, just outside of the state, different states have different laws. So, you have to work very, very, very closely with an attorney, both if you're a Georgia resident in Georgia, so that they can reach out to attorneys that are in whatever state it is that you're in so that you can figure out, hey, what is your process? Is your process the same as Georgia? If not, then they can give you, hey, this is what I would suggest that you do in order to incorporate it into your estate plan. So an estate plan is going to cover the whole gamut of things. I've spoken to attorneys in other states and I'm like, wow, y'all are very different than what we do here in Georgia. Yeah. So it's important that you have an attorney that can reach, kind of across the states, across the pond in order to figure out, hey, what do I need to do to address whatever it is that you have in other states, in other countries. And yes, it's not just real estate, but real estate's that one thing that is recorded in the county. So that's why the biggest focus is usually on real estate. When it comes to, I don't know, the family dog or a, family heirloom or something to that effect, that's simply going, picking up, and you walk off with it. Hopefully under some authority. However, when it comes to things that are titled, so think cars, think houses, those are the things that people really stand on their heads about when it comes to probate. Those are the things that are really focused on when it comes to probate. So those are kind of like those top things that are usually addressed in wills, usually addressed in trusts.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. I think this information was absolutely valuable, and I know for sure our audience will benefit from it. This month is Financial Awareness, Financial Management Month. Aside from making sure we're saving well and investing, we talked a lot about real estate too, and also about how to protect those assets and the things that we work so hard to build wealth for our families. So again, thank you for being here. Tell everyone how we can find you and all the things that you do to help us build that.
Okay, thank you. Again, my name is Dana Allen with the Allen Law Group. We have several locations around the Atlanta area. Our phone number is 404-0202, and our email address address. I can be reached directly at Dana at Allen, ALLEN, Law, LAW, Group, GROUP.org. I am happy to help with any estate planning needs or questions that you may have. I handle probate in Georgia, every county except for Fulton County. And I also do work out of Alabama. And of course, real estate needs. I am happy to assist any and everyone so that we can make sure that we properly plan for the future and just, build wealth for our heirs. So I'm happy to help.
Absolutely. Generational wealth is all that we strive for, right? And work so hard
Yes.
for.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, it's a delight to have you, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right.
Have a good one.
You too. Thank you for joining me this week. Let's continue the conversation on social media at 1 Minute with Monée on all channels. Also, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. Until next time, be well and be balanced.